Enter the realm of the NBA's most feared and ferocious players, where intimidation meets incredible talent. These basketball legends left an indelible mark on the game, from towering giants to ruthless enforcers.
I mean, this guy was a force. He was mean, he was nasty.
With a mix of unstoppable force, unbridled passion, and unapologetic ferocity, they dominated the court and struck fear into the hearts of their opponents. Let's start with number 10, Shaquille O'Neal. Have you seen Shaquille O'Neal on the court? The guy was a total beast. He's 7 feet 1 inch and weighed over 325 pounds in his prime, terrifying other players with his size and power. He dunked so hard that the backboard would shatter, or the defender would get flattened.
All the time guarded Shaq. Only player ever to not shoot anything outside of the paint and dominate.
And he makes other NBA centers look tiny. But things get scarier because Shaq is mean. He would get into fights, and one time, he even got into a fight with his own coach. When Shaq was on the Magic, Coach Scott Skiles argued with him, so Shaq threw a basketball at the coach. This dude is certified crazy. He was surrounded by the toughest players in the league, but nobody could touch him because no player in the world was as strong as Shaq. He was like a superhero or something, unstoppable. And honestly, it didn't even feel like he was human sometimes, more like a WWE wrestler or something. 9. Charles Oakley. Charles Oakley, the ultimate enforcer. He was the Bulls' secret weapon, and his job was to keep Michael Jordan safe from harm. When you played the Bulls, you weren't scared of MJ, you were scared of Oakley. He was MJ's protector, and if you wanted to mess with MJ, you had to go through him first. Standing 6 feet 8 inches and weighing 225 pounds of pure muscle, he was a freak. Usually, guys that are heavy are 6 feet 8 inches tall, but he was like a tank. Even the toughest guys, like Charles Barkley and Dennis Rodman, would take one look at him and run away. He built a 19-year NBA career on being straight up intimidating. His stats weren't mind-blowing, but teams wanted him around because he scared opponents. He was notorious for dirty fouls that'd make you think twice about driving to the hoop. And even after retiring, he still caused a scene, getting into a fight with security guards at a Knicks game and getting ejected. 8. Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer? He's a whole different level of crazy. We're talking about the infamous hard-as-nails Dirty Bill Laimbeer, the one guy who wouldn't back down from Charles Oakley's bullying. He was literally the scariest player in the NBA back in the day. He was a physical freak, standing 6 feet 11 inches, but it was his psycho-like playing style that really set him apart. Bill Laimbeer, the kingpin of the bad boy Pistons. When you think of that team, you think of dirty fouls and cheap shots, and that's all because of Laimbeer. He was the dirtiest player of them all, always elbowing guys and bullying them on the court. Nobody could stand up to him, not even the greats like Kareem, MJ, and Charles Barkley. They all got into fights with Laimbeer and hated his guts. 7. Ron Artest. Ron Artest. Man, he was a whole different level of crazy. He was super strong and physical, but what made him really scary was his psycho personality. If you messed with him, he'd go off the rails and didn't care about getting in trouble. Ejected, suspended, fined, you name it. He was one of the best defenders ever, not because of his skills, but because players were terrified of him. He even broke Michael Jordan's rib in a pickup game, and MJ stopped playing with him after that. Artest would trash talk whole teams, not just individual players, and was ready to fight them solo. He was like a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. And then he changed his name to Meta World Peace. In some games, he'd be smiling and friendly, and then in the next game, he'd be back to his old psycho self. At least he could play basketball, unlike the next guy, who was only in the league because he could throw punches. Artest's reputation was so wild that it's still talked about today. He's a legend, but not necessarily for his playing skills. 6. James Johnson. James Johnson is the NBA's ultimate tough guy. He may not have had the skills on the court, but when it came to fighting, he was the real deal. With a 27-0 record in MMA, he was undefeated and feared by all. And it wasn't just his opponents who were scared, his own teammates were too. Udonis Haslem and Bam Adebayo shared a story about how Johnson made a teammate cry, showing just how terrifying he could be. And let's be real, who wouldn't be scared of a 6'7" MMA fighter staring them down on the court? Players didn't want any part of him, so they'd pass the ball and avoid him at all costs. Johnson's presence on the court was enough to make players tremble with fear, and his reputation as the NBA's toughest player was solidified. He may not have been a star player, but he was definitely the last guy you wanted to mess with. 5. Karl Malone. Karl Malone, the terrifying NBA legend, left an indelible mark on the game. He holds the record for most technical fouls with 332, surpassing Draymond Green's 147, and threw the most elbows in NBA history with his massive arms that struck fear into opponents. Malone's elbows were infamous, like the one that sent Isaiah Thomas to the hospital with 40 stitches in 1991. He even knocked a player unconscious with a knee to the face in 1990. When Morris Lucas threatened him, Malone responded by dunking on him and destroying him in their next game. Even when just grabbing rebounds, Malone's presence was daunting, and opponents feared his swinging elbows, which contributed to his unmatched rebounding prowess. Karl Malone's menace persona took a bizarre turn in 2004 when he attempted to confront Kobe Bryant over a personal matter. He sought to fight Bryant because he had developed feelings for Bryant's wife, Vanessa. When Bryant rejected Malone's advances, he challenged Bryant to a fight. "I'm a grown man. If Kobe doesn't like me today, that's Kobe Bryant's fault. It ain't mine. We just go in the back with no cameras, no nothing, and let's just knuckle up and get it over with." 4. Dikembe Mutombo. Dikembe Mutombo, the 7 feet 2 inches giant, was a force to be reckoned with on the court. He was a shot-blocking machine, earning him the reputation as one of the scariest defenders in NBA history. His iconic finger wag celebration after a block became legendary. But what really sets him apart? He wasn't afraid of anyone, not even Michael Jordan or Shaq. He even called out Shaq for flopping in the 2001 NBA Finals. His dominance in the paint changed the game, leading teams to shoot more threes to avoid his blocks and embarrassing finger wags. And it wasn't just players who got the wag, fans did too. Luckily, he was a nice guy with a smile, but when he got angry, he was truly terrifying. 3. Rasheed Wallace. Meet Rasheed Wallace, the NBA's most volatile player, who held the record for most technical fouls in a season with 41 and got ejected from half the games he played. His notoriously hard fouls terrified teams, causing them to bench their best players. At 6 feet 11 inches with a permanent scowl, he was an alarming force, made even scarier by his unpredictability. He was the originator of the infamous phrase, "ball don't lie," would taunt opponents who missed free throws, getting inside their heads and fueling his reputation as a master of mental games. But his troubles extended far beyond the court, with a staggering number of arrests that kept him in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. 2. Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen is a player who stopped at nothing to win. With limited talent, he compensated with a ferocious and frightening style, earning him a reputation as a formidable force. He became notorious for his brutal fouls, kicks, and cheap shots, leaving opponents demanding his ejection and suspension. Bowen's relentless tactics sparked controversy throughout the league, causing harm to players in almost every game, and even leading to calls for his suspension from the NBA. His infamous style was on full display in the 2007 NBA Finals against LeBron James and the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers were the better team, but Bruce Bowen's defensive assignment on LeBron James changed the tide, helping the Spurs sweep the series 4-0 and win the NBA championship. His antics continued, including kicking Chris Paul in the face. What made him unsettling was his constant smile, hiding a ruthless competitor. As a 3-time NBA champion, he was a rare example of a scary player who achieved success and won championships. 1. Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman, aka The Menace, was a 6'8" force to be reckoned with, earning his place as the best rebounder in NBA history. His daunting presence and unpredictable behavior struck fear into opponents, exemplified by his infamous headbutting incidents and other volatile outbursts. So he was this wild card, right? He'd do crazy stuff like sit down on the court in the middle of a game and just chill. Players didn't know how to react. They were too scared of him. He even picked fights with giants like Gorga Murashon and other big guys like Patrick Ewing and David Robinson. When he joined the Bulls, suddenly nobody messed with Michael Jordan anymore. That's a wrap-up of this video. So, if you enjoyed diving into the world of the NBA's most fearsome players, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intense basketball content. Let us know in the comments who you think is the scariest player in NBA history. See you next time.